August 28th, 1963. Martin Luther King stands at a microphone with a written speech. Then gospel singer Mahalia Jackson yells four words from the crowd. King throws away his script. What happens next changes America forever. Everyone knows "I Have a Dream." It's the most famous speech in American history. Kids memorize it in school. It's quoted by politicians. It's played every Martin Luther King Day. But here's what they don't tell you. Martin Luther King almost didn't say those words. "I Have a Dream" wasn't in his prepared speech. It wasn't written down. It wasn't planned. In fact, King's advisors specifically told him not to use the dream phrase because he'd already used it in other speeches. It was old material, recycled content. But in the middle of delivering his carefully written speech to 250,000 people on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, something happened. Someone shouted from the crowd, and Martin Luther King made a split-second decision that would echo through history. This is the story of those 6 minutes, the unplanned, unrehearsed, improvised moment when the most important civil rights leader in American history threw away his script and spoke from his soul, and how that decision made in a fraction of a second changed the trajectory of an entire nation. Get ready, because what you're about to hear will make you realize that sometimes the most powerful moments in history happen when leaders stop following the plan. Let's rewind to the night before. August 27th, 1963. The Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., room 2352. Martin Luther King Jr. is 34 years old. He's exhausted. For the past 8 years, he's been leading the civil rights movement, organizing boycotts, leading marches, getting arrested, receiving death threats. His house has been bombed. He's been stabbed. The FBI is following him everywhere, and tomorrow he has to give the most important speech of his life. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom is the largest civil rights demonstration in American history. Over 250,000 people are expected. Every major civil rights leader will be there. The entire nation will be watching on television, and Martin Luther King is the final speaker. In his hotel room, King is surrounded by advisors. They're arguing about what he should say. They've prepared a speech, but it's not quite right. It's too formal, too safe, too political. King's advisor, Clarence Jones, has written a draft. It talks about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, about America's broken promises to black citizens, about the fierce urgency of now. It's a good speech, solid, professional, but it's not inspiring. It's not going to move people the way this moment requires. They work on revisions until after midnight. King is sitting at the desk, writing in his careful handwriting. His advisors are suggesting changes. Someone brings coffee. They're all running on adrenaline and anxiety. Around 4 a.m., King finally finishes. He has 8 typed pages, a 16-minute speech. It's about justice, equality, the Constitution, voting rights, police brutality, everything important. But there's one thing King keeps wanting to add, and his advisors keep telling him to remove: the dream motif. King has used this phrase before, in a speech in Detroit 2 months earlier, in other sermons. "I have a dream that one day..." It's powerful, it's emotional, it resonates with audiences. But his advisor, Wyatt T. Walker, says, "Martin, you've used that. It's cliché now. Don't use it again." King reluctantly agrees. The "I Have a Dream" section is cut from the speech. At 4:30 a.m., King finally goes to sleep. 4 hours later, he wakes up to the biggest day of his life, August 28th, 1963. The day begins early. By 9 a.m., people are already gathering at the Lincoln Memorial. By noon, the reflecting pool is surrounded by 250,000 people. This is unprecedented, the largest demonstration in American history. People have traveled from across the country by bus, by train, by car, black and white together, young and old, students, teachers, workers, clergy. The FBI is terrified. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover has convinced himself this march will turn violent. He's stationed thousands of police and National Guard troops around Washington. Hospitals are on alert for mass casualties. Hoover even has a plan to arrest all the civil rights leaders if riots break out. But the march is peaceful, beautiful. People are singing freedom songs, holding signs. The energy is hopeful, determined, powerful. The speeches begin around 2 p.m. One after another, civil rights leaders speak. John Lewis, Roy Wilkins, Whitney Young. Each speech is powerful. Each one gets applause. But everyone is waiting for the final speaker. Martin Luther King Jr. At 3:30 p.m., King is introduced. He walks to the podium. He's wearing a dark suit, looks tired but focused. He adjusts the microphone, looks out at the massive crowd stretching as far as he can see, and he begins reading his prepared speech. 50 years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It's a good opening. Echoing Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, establishing historical weight. The crowd is listening respectfully. King continues through his prepared text, talking about the promissory note of the Declaration of Independence, how America has defaulted on this note for Black citizens, how they've come to cash a check that has been marked insufficient funds. It's powerful language, but King is reading it. You can hear it in his voice. He's delivering a prepared speech, not speaking from the heart. He's about 8 minutes into the speech, approaching the end of his written material. And then something happens. Standing behind King is gospel singer Mahalia Jackson. She's sung at the march earlier. She knows King personally. She's heard him preach many times, and she can hear in his voice that something is missing. The fire, the passion. The King she knows isn't on that podium. He's trapped in his script. So Mahalia Jackson does something incredible. She shouts from behind him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin. Tell them about the dream." King hears her. He pauses. For just a fraction of a second, you can see him make a decision. He pushes his written speech to the side of the podium, looks up at the crowd, and starts speaking without notes. "I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream." The change is immediate. His voice transforms. The careful, measured tone disappears. Now he's preaching. Now he's Martin Luther King, the Baptist minister, not Martin Luther King, the political leader. "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." The crowd starts responding, shouting, "Yes, and tell it," like they're in church. "I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood." Each line builds. Each "I have a dream" gets stronger. King is conducting the crowd like an orchestra. His voice rises and falls. He pauses for effect. He lets the rhythm of the words carry the message. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." This is the line everyone remembers. But in the moment, it's not the climax. King keeps building. "I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers." The crowd is on their feet. People are crying. This isn't a political speech anymore. This is a vision, a prophecy, a promise, and King isn't finished. "I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low." He's quoting the Bible now, Isaiah 44:5. Taking the language of Scripture and applying it to civil rights. Making the march a holy mission, not just a political protest. Then he reaches the crescendo. "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty we are free at last." The crowd erupts. 250,000 people cheering, crying, embracing. The television cameras capture it all, broadcast it across America, across the world. Those final 6 minutes, unplanned, unscripted, improvised, become the most important speech in American history. And none of it was supposed to happen. In the immediate aftermath, King's advisors are both thrilled and terrified. Thrilled because the speech was clearly powerful. Terrified because King deviated from the plan, said things that might upset political allies, used religious language that might alienate secular supporters. But within hours, it's clear. The speech worked. Better than anything they could have planned. Newspapers across America print the full text. "I Have a Dream" becomes the headline. Television networks replay it, radio stations broadcast it. The speech transcends the march, it becomes its own cultural moment. President John F. Kennedy, who had been lukewarm on civil rights, invites King to the White House. The political winds shift. Suddenly, civil rights legislation that seemed impossible starts seeming inevitable. But here's what most people don't know: the FBI's reaction. J. Edgar Hoover watches the speech and writes in his notes, "This is the most dangerous Negro in America." Not because King advocated violence, he didn't, but because he could inspire millions with his words, because he had moral authority, because he was becoming more powerful than politicians. From that day forward, the FBI intensifies surveillance on King. They tap his phones. They bug his hotel rooms. They try to find dirt on him affairs, financial impropriety, anything to discredit him. In 1964, the FBI sends King an anonymous letter suggesting he should commit suicide before his filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation. They include recordings of King's alleged extramarital affairs. The government that King was trying to hold accountable to its own ideals was actively working to destroy him. Now here's where the story gets complicated. Because "I Have a Dream" became so famous that it obscured the rest of Martin Luther King's message. People remember the dream. They forget the nightmare King described in the first half of the speech. The police brutality, the segregation, the economic injustice, the fierce urgency of now. White America especially latched on to, judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. They used that line to argue against affirmative action, against reparations, against any race-conscious policies. They turned King's radical vision into a comfortable, non-threatening message about everyone getting along. They made him safe, palatable, a figure everyone could celebrate without actually changing anything. But the real Martin Luther King? He was much more radical than the sanitized version taught in schools. After the March on Washington, King didn't slow down. He kept pushing. In 1967, he spoke out against the Vietnam War, alienating President Lyndon Johnson and many liberal allies. He said America was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. He started organizing the Poor People's Campaign, demanding economic justice. He said, "We must recognize that we can't solve our problem now until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power." This wasn't the moderate King of the Dream speech. This was Revolutionary King. The King who said, "A riot is the language of the unheard." The King who understood that racism and economic exploitation were interconnected. The King who was becoming increasingly radical as he saw how slowly progress was coming. And this King scared people, both white conservatives who saw him as a threat, and white liberals who wanted a nice, safe civil rights leader who asked politely for equality. April 4th, 1968. Memphis, Tennessee, the Lorraine Motel. Martin Luther King is in Memphis supporting striking sanitation workers. It's not glamorous work, not a big national march, just solidarity with working-class black men who are being exploited and want better wages. At 6:01 p.m., King steps onto the balcony of his motel room. He's going to dinner. He's joking with his friends in the parking lot below. A single bullet hits him in the jaw. He falls. His friends rush to him. An ambulance arrives, but the damage is too severe. At 7:05 p.m., Martin Luther King Jr. is pronounced dead. He's 39 years old. Riots break out in over 100 American cities. Millions of people who believed in King's dream of nonviolent change feel that dream has died with him. The assassin, James Earl Ray, is caught 2 months later. He confesses, then recants. Conspiracy theories abound. Was it a lone gunman? Was the FBI involved? The CIA? The Memphis police? We still don't know the full truth. Too much evidence was destroyed or hidden. But here's what we do know. Martin Luther King was killed at the exact moment he was expanding his message beyond civil rights to economic justice. When he was uniting poor people across racial lines. When he was threatening the economic power structure. He died supporting garbage workers demanding dignity and fair wages. That's not the story most people tell. But it's the truth. Today, Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday. There are streets named after him in every major city. His statue stands in Washington, D.C. Schools teach about him. Everyone celebrates him. But do we actually honor what he stood for? King's dream wasn't just about black kids and white kids holding hands. It was about dismantling systems of oppression, economic exploitation, militarism, materialism. He called these the triplets of evil. King's dream wasn't gradualism and patience. It was the fierce urgency of now. It was direct action, civil disobedience, making people uncomfortable until change happened. King's dream wasn't colorblindness, it was justice. Reparations for centuries of theft and exploitation. Actual redistribution of resources and power. The sanitized version of King we celebrate is useful to those who don't want real change. They can point to the dream speech, take the comfortable parts, and ignore everything else King said and did. But if Martin Luther King came back today, he wouldn't be satisfied. He'd see that black Americans are still disproportionately poor, incarcerated, killed by police. He'd see that economic inequality has worsened. He'd see that America spends trillions on wars while people go homeless and hungry. And he'd be out there organizing, marching, getting arrested, making powerful people uncomfortable, just like he did when he was alive. So let's go back to that moment on August 28, 1963, when Mahalia Jackson shouted, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." That spontaneous decision, throwing away the script and speaking from the heart, created the most famous speech in American history. But it also created a problem, because the dream became so famous that it overshadowed everything else. It became a tool to make people feel good without actually changing anything. Martin Luther King's real legacy isn't the dream, it's the action, the marches, the boycotts, the jail time, the letters from Birmingham jail, the speeches against war and poverty, the solidarity with striking workers. The dream was beautiful, but King knew dreams aren't enough. You have to fight for them, sacrifice for them, risk everything for them. And that's what King did. He risked his safety, his reputation, his family's security, and ultimately his life for justice. The real tragedy isn't just that King was killed, it's that we've turned him into a safe, comfortable figure that everyone can celebrate without actually following his example. We celebrate the dream and ignore the dreamer. We quote content of their character and ignore radical redistribution of economic power. We make him a hero and forget he was a threat to the powerful. Martin Luther King didn't die peacefully in his sleep after achieving his goals. He was assassinated while fighting for sanitation workers' wages. That's the real story, and it's the one we need to remember. If this story changed how you see Martin Luther King Jr., subscribe to discover more hidden truths about historical figures who were more radical than we're taught. Like if you'll never hear "I Have a Dream" the same way again, comment below, what part of King's actual message has been erased from history? Let's honor MLK by remembering the revolutionary, not just the dreamer.